But y'all have taken it to Houston, and like it's starting to move around. But like crawfish has become very prominent. But it's like it's a movement of like the food is spreading around, and people are being able to taste the influences of all of these people from like you. And I loved and from the 1700s and 1800s. But I am tickled when you were like, well, I obviously wasn't there. But in the 17 to 1800s, as if it had to be specified. So that made me laugh. But
yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I think so many people so many people have come and seen, and I think it's a culture that's really special and really unique. And so I think for me to be a small part of people spreading that gospel wherever it may be is an honor for me.
Yeah, I mean, so that's for our listeners. I started recording this episode just when we were shooting the shit earlier. But for our listeners, I'll do a quick intro. You probably heard it earlier, but we're sitting down speaking over the internet with Chef Drake Leonards from Eunice restaurant in Houston. He is a Louisiana native who is now, like I mentioned, taken the good word and the good food outward. I love it. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, I'm not a Houston regular, so I'd love to know. Let's talk a little bit about Eunice. So, what is your restaurant kind of? What are you throwing on the menu? And then tell everybody a little bit about what they can expect when you're coming out to Denver for the Mardi Gras party.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll tell you what, we're so excited. I was sitting in the restaurant right now, but we're about to get ready for lunch. But the other, I don't know, 2 nights ago, had a couple of tables and said, "Hey, we hear you coming out to Denver. I've got a business in Denver, or I've got a friend in Denver, and they're coming over, and I'm going to tell my other friends and north of Denver, south of Denver, whatever." So we're so excited to be coming to Denver to bring just gumbo and maybe some of those crawfish that you speak of. Maybe we'll have to sneak a few of those onto the menu. But so Eunice is our restaurant here in Houston, and so I grew up. Eunice is a little town I grew up in, right off of I-10 between Lake Charles and Lafayette. Went down to school in Thibodaux, Louisiana. So it was more that kind of coastal Cajun, really, really sort of where I saw some of that cooking, not only while I was in school, but also in the homes of so many of the people that took me in, and so many great friends that I met down there. From there, went and spent some time in New Orleans, moved to New York, and worked.
Oh shit!
Yeah, worked for a guy named Daniel Baloud, and in a really some kind of high end French food that he was cooking. So worked there, then went to the Southern Black Forest in Germany, right on the French-German border. And so there worked for a chef that was, really this small little town, really kind of reminded me of the way that we grew up in Eunice, in a sense that there were, way before this farm to table movement that you see all around the country. It was just normal, right? And it kind of reminds me that kind of Cajun ethos is like, what do you use or what do you have, right? So my dad always had a little garden with tomatoes and a couple of green onions and a couple of cucumbers. And in the summertime, we ate tomatoes and cucumber salad every day as it ran out, right? And in that gumbo, there was always a little meat market that we got our sausage and our guinea hens or our chickens or whatever. And so that was just classic way to grow up, and you saw that in Baton Rouge as well. So, and the rice came from, my dad was a rice farmer in agriculture. The little town's a lot of agriculture, rice and crawfish. And so somebody, you knew somebody that you used their rice and so on and so forth. And so, cooking was always a big part of what we did and what we had. But I saw those same similarities while I was in the Black Forest in Germany, right? But it was with porcini mushrooms, and it was with wild boar, and it was with venison, and we made cheese on the property. And we were just about 5 miles at the foot of the Black Forest in the mountains, and so just about 5 miles south of us was one of the last vineyards from Alsace, the Alsatian sort of vineyards that were growing the Burgundy style grapes, right? And so, and some Alsatian grapes as well. So, it was kind of that whole farm to table thing that I saw again in Germany and in Europe when I was there. That was like, it was this wake up moment. And I was able to see, right, cooking French food and cooking European food and seeing how all of those cultures broke out and created what we knew as our Louisiana cuisine, right? What we knew as a kind of Cajun and Creole cuisine and the influence of that food. And so that's what really kind of woke me up to really know that, I was fortunate to grow up with something so special, that cuisine and that food and the people are so special in Louisiana. And so it kind of made me really want to start to cook that food as I tried to run away from it. And then running away from it brought me back to it. And so at Eunice, we just try to take some of those influences and use that to build a menu that has kind of some, I'd say, Louisiana kind of soulful sensibility, but doesn't exactly walk the fine line of like classic Cajun or classic Creole or classic anything, right? I feel like it's the kind of the 2020 version of what a modern sort of Louisiana, a sort of, influenced, kind of globally influenced restaurant can be. And that's why I kind of say Houston is this, for me, one, sort of the new Cajun and Creole city, what New Orleans was so long ago and what New Orleans still continues to be, but Houston is the same thing and bringing in so many ingredients. And so, we marry sort of one of my favorite dishes, and it's something that we've kind of become known for, is that we marry this brought in hand pulled Italian burrata, right, with homemade pepper jelly that we grew up recipe that was kind of passed down from generation. And we top it with a little Cajun caviar, which comes from the shoe pick fish from the Atchafalaya Basin. And so I grew up eating cream cheese and pepper jelly my whole life, right? And I think so many Southerners would see that on a Christmas table or a Christmas spread. And that was kind of the inspiration of this dish, right? But we used what we knew from Europe and what we kind of feel as though we had in our own backyard right here in Houston, as these importers are bringing in this great product. And so we use this great Italian burrata, and we match it with the shoe pick caviar, and we make a little Southern buttermilk biscuit that we serve with it. And so you build a little burrata, pepper jelly, caviar sandwich with your buttermilk biscuit, and it's something that I think to me is just kind of tells you, it's a dish that kind of tells you who we are as a restaurant and who we are as chefs and kind of everything you know about our team. So that's a little bit.
That sounds so fire. I can't even express it. And we just had a new restaurant that kind of opened up here that does slight Cajun. It kind of plays the hits. And, it's kind of, but what they do have is Leidenhammer's bread, so that is one distinguishing fact. And they fly in the shrimp from the Gulf. So they have some things that are playing the hits that are pretty strong. That's Magnolia. For anybody that's curious, they've seen it on our Instagram. Let me ask you a question. You mentioned, how y'all kind of grew up, and so actually it's a two-parter. The first part is, it sounds like y'all almost were almost self-sufficient on, where y'all were living with making the cheese, your dad being a farmer, things of that nature. I feel a very Southern thing is learning from your relatives how to really, truly cook, and usually it's butter where we come from. Who's the best cook/chef in the family? Is it you, or is it a grandmother out there?
I don't know who it is. I can just tell you it's definitely not me. And any time I go home, whether it's with my family or my friends, they're the first to tell me that, So I was very fortunate to be exposed that, everyone cooked, right? And so my thing with our restaurant is that, and I said it earlier and I'll say it again, it's not necessarily about what it is, but I was exposed to the generosity and the hospitality. I think that Southern Louisiana kind of really does as well as anyone, and that there was always a warm meal to eat and something cold to drink. It wasn't always, it wasn't caviar and champagne all the time, but there was always some soulful behind. It was always acknowledging that, whatever we have, it's here for you as well. And so that's kind of what we try to take in this restaurant. And it's what I try to take in my cooking, and kind of something that we do. And if we can create that in our restaurant, I think people will always feel good about coming here, hopefully, and giving us an opportunity to cook for them. Trust us with the menu. And so that's kind of something that we try to create, and something that I learned growing up.
And, you kind of mentioned how you brought in these influences from everywhere else, or, from other places, obviously international cuisines, and flavor is very much what we talked about with, just the Louisiana style as well. How was working the French scene in New York and then transitioning did you go from New York to Houston, or did I miss a city? And yeah, you went to New Orleans after that. Did you like New York? How was cooking in a kitchen in the biggest city in the country work?
Yeah, I listen. I've been so fortunate. All of my stops along the way, I've just met so many people that have been so generous with their time, with their talents, and with kind of showing me. And working in these big markets, you go to work for, you sign up to work at this name brand restaurant, no matter where you go. But what you see and what you meet is this culture of cooks and people, your colleagues, that become such a big influence on on the way you cook and the way you do things, And so for me, New York was a time in my life that I was kind of young and moved from small town to Thibodaux, Louisiana, which is just a slight larger town, to one of the biggest cities in the world. And so just being exposed, just exposure to everything, just exposure to food, different cuisines, different systems, exposure to colleagues from all over the country that had cooked all over the world. And so it was just this great time of growth for me personally, with food, with just learning, just literally seeing that everybody's not exactly from the South, and what makes the South so special, And it's as simple sometimes as a good morning, as a good evening, as a hello, as a please and thank you, and so you forget about some of those things till you're not around it every day, and so. So New York was just a phenomenal time. I was speaking about it earlier to some of my colleagues here in Houston, and then going to Europe again. So many people took me in that didn't have to, and showed me and treated me so well that's hopefully I know it's not hopefully. I hope that it's what people take after they've worked with us and spent time in our kitchen. That so many people have been so generous and so good to me that I just want to continue to repay that favor.
Hey, I love it, brother. And when you mentioned, like the New York and the international scene, Houston has become one of those cities as well where folks are from all over the world, because of the industries that, are prominent in the area. So you have kind of a very much a melting pot in Houston. And so, the Cajun scene is obviously a very big influence, but are the Louisiana Creole Cajun scene food supplies, but you have, a little bit of everything there. So, you kind of get to test all of your skill sets while being in Houston. And then you can also kind of scratch that itch. I feel Denver, we're growing into one of those prominent or larger cities. Right now we're a little bit, middle market for sure. But, one thing that we're really stoked about is, obviously you're going to bring some of that influence, but Chef Troy Gard has done it as well as a restaurateur here for a while. Is we're excited to kind of start to seeing Denver as becoming one of those towns with a wide variety of food and, like a different, like a lot of different folks are here. And so we're starting to see, obviously we have a Mexican influence, but there's also a very large prominent Asian influences kind of coming into fruition here. But, we're starting to see, or not starting to see, but you see a fair amount of Southerners out here as well, not just our friend group, but you see a lot of folks that have kind of come out. I won't say escaping like I did from Mississippi. I got the hell out of there. But, it's a similar situation. So we're fired up to have you out here, Chef. I would love for you to tell us a little bit or tell our listeners a little bit about what you're going to bring flair-wise to the Denver. Mardi Gras, we're having a supper, Mardi Gras party, Fat Tuesday, February 25th, I believe is the date. So
that's it, Mardi Gras Day, yeah.
Yes, sir. Let's get after it, and then we'll go repent on Wednesday for Ash Wednesday.
That's it. That's the Louisiana way right there, I'll tell you.
Yeah, but we're fired up to have you out here. And so I'd love for you to tell our listeners a little bit about what can we expect? What kind of tastes of the South will you be bringing with you?
And we're so excited to be up there, and listen, Chef Troy Gard has opened a place here in Houston just down the road, and so excited to have him and his team. We've hosted them here in our restaurant as they were getting going, and they've been so nice to bring us up and do a little collaboration. So we couldn't be more excited. We're gonna bring some of the hits. We're gonna bring the gumbo with that potato salad. We're gonna make sure, I'm working on it hard to make sure that we have crawfish for you guys as well. And so we're gonna make some traditional dishes. I think we're going to stick with really tradition. So I can see a little crawfish etouffee, maybe with a little handmade cavatelli. I can see hot bowls of gumbo with potato salad and chicken cracklings, for sure. I can see maybe some little crispy oysters with buttermilk dressing and caviar. And